Hey there, this is Ill Factor from beatacademy.com. Welcome to the channel. In this video, I'm going to share some music production tips and techniques while recreating FKA Twigs' Cellophane. Now, this track doesn't have a lot of instrumentation in it, but the principles I'm going to share with you in this video are going to help you get the most emotion out of a minimalistic type of track and have a big impact. So be sure to watch the whole video so you can catch all the nuances that I'm going to be sharing with you that you can make your own and use in your upcoming projects. So let me show you the finished product. So FKA Twigs really does a great job of demonstrating and pouring those emotions out in her performance. And the instrumentation is really there to kind of craft and create the atmosphere and mood for her to do that in. I'm going to start by focusing on the piano. Now, by listening to the reference, immediately made me think of a broken toy piano. And so you could just easily browse and see if you can find a patch that would immediately match that similar type of vibe. And that's always good because that's less time spending and tweaking and things like that. So I found a broken piano patch here in Ableton Live under the instrument rack folder. So that pretty much captures the detuned piano, but I want to walk you through how you can recreate that similar type of vibe or sound just using a regular grand piano patch. So I went ahead and loaded a basic grand piano instrument here from Ableton Live, and you could follow along using any piano sound that you might have in your DAW. Pretty basic and straightforward. Now we're going to start by adjusting the velocity, because what that means is that the velocity goes a long way in creating the overall hardness and softness of the actual piano performance. So I can either go through all the notes, select them, and adjust the velocity here in my piano region, or I can just use a velocity plugin in the MIDI effects folder in Ableton Live and adjust all the notes here. So I'll lower the output. So that means that the maximum output velocity is going to be somewhere between 59 and the lowest the velocity can go will be around 27. You can also adjust the drive here, so that'll change the velocity curve. So this will take a while. It ramps up to the velocity you have set over here. So then I can increase this a little bit. And the same thing with the comp. So now that we have a soft piano, let's go ahead and use Ableton Live's doubler. This is in the phaser flanger plugin. And we're going to head over here to the doubler mode. And we're basically going to dial in and mess around with the frequency, amount, and feedback. Then we'll use Redux, which is a digital distortion. And I'm going to use a cabinet plugin to give it more of that warmth that you would get running as through a speaker. It's low in volume, so I'm going to use a compressor to bring up the overall volume, but yet keep a more consistent performance since we are using the velocity plugin to make it soft. And then an EQ at the end just to boost some of the low mid and give a little more brightness to it. Now let's go ahead and bypass all of these plugins. Now we want to accent that first initial chord. So I'm going to do that by just automating reverb here. So I'm going to go ahead and enable my automation. And just for that first initial chord, we're going to draw in to send as much reverb as we can. So on return track B, I have a reverb with the low cut and high cut off, just kind of exaggerating the decay time and cranking up the diffuse a little bit. So that's going to give us a nice initial accent at the first strike of the chords. Now what's cool is you can still hear the chord just ringing out, and it just washes really nicely. So I like this type of effect where we're not placing reverb heavily on the whole performance, but we're just accenting that first down, that down note with the chord there. And then we have the tail end of the reverb just kind of lingering over the chords, and it gives more of that cool haunting type of vibe. Now, I have to confess, I usually often dive straight into my hard drive or folders with one-shot samples to browse and find the right type of sample that I would want to use. And I oftentimes just forget or overlook that I have a microphone on hand and that I can simply just record me banging on anything in my studio, and I will have a unique sound that I can implement in my productions. So in this case, for the kick drum, that's exactly what I did. I just used the microphone that I'm currently using now, positioned it on my desk, and just pounded my fist on it to create what we hear here. So that's just me literally pounding my fist on my desk, making sure that the gain has been adjusted correctly so I'm not overloading and clipping as I record in. Once I have that kick drum, I can then go ahead and drag that into a new MIDI track down here below, and it'll create a sampler. I can just go ahead and then focus in on one sample that I want to just re-trigger over and over again. So the reason why I decided to load it into a sampler is so that I have the ability to adjust the decay, sustain, and the overall body of the sample. But now what I'm missing is just the overall bottom end, some nice beef to it. So I'm using Ableton Live's Corpus plugin as somewhat of a sub kick, or a way to just add some low subharmonic frequencies to the kick drum. Find a sweet spot there and dial the dry and wet knob to where it's a good combination of the texture of the kick, but the low end from the Corpus. And then just use an EQ8 to just kind of tame the low end and warm up the kick a little bit. And a saturator to really give it more of that boost and overall gain to the kick. And staying with the same theme, I just went ahead and recorded myself doing the shaker or that percussive rhythm that I can hear in the reference. So just went ahead and recorded myself doing that. And then I'm using this auto filter to warm up the overall sound. Usually when you use an EQ or filter, you can go ahead and take something that is bright, and by eliminating some of the high end, you make it more intimate. That's what we like to say, it makes it more warmer. And so it also feels like it's sending that sound a little further to the back of the mix. Now, next, I do want to have a thin layer of atmosphere that can kind of help glue some of these elements together. Now, unlike using a traditional approach where I would use maybe a 2 or more oscillator synth and create a pad, I want to do something where I'm re-sampling maybe the reverb tail of my piano patch, and then just use that in a loop cycle so that I can have that re-triggered as a pad. So let me walk you through what I mean. So here I have an audio track, just a blank audio track, and in Ableton Live, I have the option to choose resampling. This just gives me the ability to just record anything that I'm hearing within my DAW. So I'll leave that on record enabled, and then I'm going to put input monitoring on that broken the broken piano that I have. And this is going to allow me to just play any note. I'll play the C on my MIDI keyboard. As you can see here, the VU meter is triggered, so it's on standby, ready to record. But what I want to do is create a nice reverb tail. So this has a reverb already in the actual instrument. So I'm going to solo these 2 tracks and just hit the record here in my session view. And I'll just wait for the reverb tail to finish. Once I've done that, we now have this single note here. And what we're going to do is transform that into our pad. So I can just take this now and load it into a simpler. And I've already done that already here in this track. So the key is you want a nice fade so that it's not very noticeable when it cycles over again. So once I have my loop parameter set in where I like it, I can now go ahead and trigger using chords. So I'll set the attack all the way up, the release up as well, and I will use a hybrid reverb from Ableton Live right after that to create some more space and dimension. Now watch how this pad helps kind of glue these elements together. Now for the bass, I thought, this is simple. Just go ahead and find a synth and use a sine wave and just play a couple octaves lower, and there you go. But I want to be able to actually add a little bit of attitude to it as well. So it won't be just a simple sine wave. We might want to layer it with maybe something like a square wave as well and see what that does. So here we have a MIDI track, and I'm going to go to my instruments. Let's choose wavetable and drag and drop that. Now, if you're not on Ableton Live, you can use any synth that you might have in your DAW. We'll start by having the first oscillator set to a sine wave. Now, if you can't hear it on your laptop, then definitely use some headphones. But what I'll do is then set oscillator 2 to our square wave. But now what we want to do is set that square wave to a whole octave lower, so it adds the grit and growl that we're looking for. Now let's just bring the frequency cutoff down. Now rather than just having one sine wave, layering it just gives that extra harmonic so that it kind of just gives a bit more presence when everything else is in. Now we can do some slight automation to give life to that bass as well. So I can go ahead, right-click that filter, show automation. And let's say as we progress from one note to the next, as we transition from that D to the G, let's go ahead and draw in some automations here. So I'll go up a little bit like this, bring this down, and then bring it down like that. Put a point here, and then bring this back down like that. So we're just slightly growling up, and you can bend that by holding the Option key and bring this back down again. You can make it really more drastic and however you feel. But I kind of like doing this, especially in these type of productions, because it's these small little details that really help accentuate these moments, and they give it just helps create the atmosphere a lot better. And then to kind of help glue everything all together, I'm going to put a tape saturated plugin on the master fader. And for this case, I'll use Softtube's Dirty Tape plugin. And this will help create a little bit more flutter that can be noticeable on the piano. But this really helps kind of glue all these instruments together. Well, I hope this was helpful and encouraging in any way. And if you're looking for professional guidance and help with your own music production, and you're serious about taking that next step with producing your own music, I have a free course. Actually, this course will walk you through the fundamentals and essentials of producing your first song and sharing that song with the rest of the world. So this course is absolutely yours free. Just simply visit beatacademy.com/produce, or you can click on the link below in the description box. This course will walk you through everything you need if you're just getting started with producing music, or maybe you've been producing music for a while, but you just need a refresher of some of the essentials. Well, then this course is for you. I also have a bunch of resources that can be very helpful and beneficial for you. So be sure to visit beatacademy.com for professional guidance with producing your music. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe so YouTube can keep you up to date with upcoming videos. And I'll see you next time.